Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With fishingbooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. Fishingbooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to fishingbooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today. Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With fishingbooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. Fishingbooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to fishingbooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today.
Join Justin Townsend and the Harvesting Nature crew as they explore the world of cooking wild fish and game while sharing recipes, tips, tricks, and lessons learned from their pursuit of wild food. We sure hope you ate before the show, 'cause you're gonna leave hungry. This is the Wild Fish and Game Podcast.
Morning, everyone. Man, oh man, it is early morning here in Hawaii. I don't know why, but I'm extra tired, but it's okay. Excited to put together a sweet little podcast episode for you. We're going to dive into something we've talked about before, and we've kind of like scratched the surface a bit, thinking through like the offal in particular, different organs and things like that. Really from the perspective of like, we're not going to probably talk about the heart. We're not going to probably talk about the liver, probably not the kidneys. Those are more common ones. We've talked about those. We actually, in upcoming release of our cookbook, Cooking by Cuts, have an entire section dedicated to what is categorized as the fifth quarter. And so if you want to dive into like some of those organs and recipes and things like that from that, that's a good place to go. More info on that when it comes out. But as far as that, I'd like to also introduce Anna Borgman with me, who's a good friend and colleague, and she's here to help discuss this topic with me. So, Anna, you want to introduce yourself for everyone?
Sure. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I live in Montana. I'm a butcher. These days, I actually mostly do slaughter. I do field harvests and learned slaughter working on a state inspected kill floor for a couple of years and really learned to truly butcher and cut meat there, and then started my own business. I own Chaos Farms, which is an actual farm, and I've got about 300-ish chickens, not really sure how many at this point. They're hard to count. I sell eggs in Bozeman. If anyone lives in Montana, they can go to Bozeman and get my eggs. But I do game processing pretty much year round. I've got some bear sausage in the freezer right now that I need to get out to my customer. But it's kind of year round, and that takes up a ton of my time. And then I get to go do stuff like the pig camp that you guys do in Texas and teach people how to field dress and butcher their animals. And that's probably my favorite thing. I love doing classes. I love teaching, and that's a real highlight of my year.
Well, also too, we haven't really talked about this. We have a whitetail deer camp coming up in January that we're about to launch, probably either this week or next week. So depending on when you're listening to the podcast episode, it may very well be out already. It's going to be a limited number of seats, but Anna's going to be there teaching butchery as well. So we're excited to have her and excited to have a new animal format for camp. Should be fun. And that one will be in Oklahoma, which is my home state. So I'm excited too.
Yeah, I'm excited for that one. That'll be interesting.
It should be fun. So how did you become sort of interested in butchery and slaughter and intersection? And you've got a cooking background as well. We haven't touched on that yet. That's actually where we met, was at a BHA rendezvous, like cooking event, and got to hang out a couple times doing some cooking. So where did they all begin? Where did it all kind of like collide?
Yeah, that's right. We met at, that rendezvous. I think that was right after I'd moved to Montana. And yeah, that was a fun rendezvous.
It was a good one.
That was a great one. Let's see. I think it was about 10 years ago, maybe longer. I decided to go to culinary school, and I had worked in restaurants, sort of front of house, basically my whole adult life. And then I ended up living in Australia for a bit and working at a restaurant down there. And it was an incredible place. The chef was incredible. really piqued my interest in cooking, which just hadn't really crossed my mind until that point. Moved back to Oregon and decided to go to culinary school, really with the intent of writing about food, not so much cooking. I wanted to write about food history, and I thought a good place to start would be to become a better cook, essentially. And yeah, really, I took a butchery class, I think my second year. And it kind of blew my mind, and I was obsessed from day one. And while I was in culinary school, I also started grad school. I did a program called Food Systems and Society. So it's basically sort of the social issues that arise from our food policies, domestic and global. And that was really fascinating. And by the time I was done with grad school and I had left culinary school, I decided to come to Montana because I knew that meat production, agriculture, hunting, that was sort of the place I wanted to be in. And yeah, I was a line cook for a couple years in Bozeman. I worked at a food truck, worked at a spot downtown, and then decided I really needed to just dive in and go work at a meat shop. So I started working at a state inspected shop right outside of Bozeman, then was there for a few years. Yeah, learned how to cut really fast. Really learned, I mean, slaughter was what I thought I wanted to do. I don't know why that was in my head, but I walked in there and said I wanted to be on the kill floor, and to their credit, they let me. So, yeah, and I remember the first day I went in there, they were killing pigs, and I thought, well, this is when I'll find out if I can do this or not. And it was, totally fine. And then dove right in and ended up being one of two people on that kill floor for about 2 years and learned a ton, learned a lot. So,
how do you think that sort of like big takeaway translated into kind of your own business of doing now like a lot of field slaughter? What motivated you to make the jump and move into kind of your own work?
I didn't necessarily want to leave. That was hard leaving that job because I really my main concern is for the animals. That's I
Mm-hmm.
know that we did a really good job at that shop and we do a really good job now, and that's always my main concern is the well-being of the animals. So leaving the shop was hard because you have to let go of that control, and I know they do a good job still, but wanting to do field harvest, on a kill floor you're in kind of a concrete box. You're inside all day. It got kind of hard on me, and I just realized that I needed to be outside and also have control sort of over my own schedule and see what that was like and if I could actually swing it. And it's hard. It's really, really hard. It's hard to be your own boss, but it's really rewarding. I mean, to get to go out and I meet new people around, where I live, around Montana every week doing this. And it's really cool. People want to be involved. They want to see what's happening to their animals and just learn a little bit more. And some people are a little more nervous about it, and you watch them sort of overcome a fear that they have, whether it's watching their own animal die or thinking that it's going to be gross or scary. And it's really incredible watching people sort of move through these emotions and learn the process of it. And I love that. And I love teaching. And so that's been my main focus is I really like talking people through it, I guess.
We've talked a little bit about, and so this is way off topic, but it reserve the right, given the fact that it's my own podcast, to kind of dive in this direction. But we've talked, and we mentioned it. I mentioned it a little bit in the book as sort of like the kind of sunset of a lot of processing and butchering facilities across the United States. You see that in your area, and then you see more of a demand or appetite from people to have sort of like at-home or in-field butchery services offered up.
Yeah, I mean, I think running a meat shop, I have a lot of love for people that are doing that because it's hard work. The regulations are crazy, with just seasons, right? Like your demand will increase and decrease, trying to keep people employed that whole time, keep people paid well. It's a tough thing. And so there are a lot of smaller shops that shut down because it's really difficult. It's kind of like, anything in the food industry. The margins are small
Mm-hmm.
and you're dependent on a whole host of things that are out of your control. So yeah, I do. It worries me a little bit. It frustrates me. I feel for the people that own these shops. I feel for the producers. People are always scrambling to find new meat shops to go to. And I think people also think that opening a shop might be easier than it actually is. So you see one's open and then close pretty quickly.
Also, another common theme in the food industry as well.
Totally, yeah. I mean, it seems really glamorous. It seems like you've seen you watch Chef's Table or you watch something on Netflix or a documentary, and people want to get involved and they want to be useful and helpful and do something that's important, and it's just a lot harder than it looks. And I've gone through that myself. When I left the shop, I thought, oh, I'll just build my own little shop and I'll have a custom exempt processing place. And the more I thought about it, it's like I don't know that that's realistic for me, at least not right now. And I also don't know that that's what I want to commit all my time to. It's a huge, huge time commitment. So fortunately, there are a couple small shops around here that I've been able to work with so that I can do the mobile slaughter part and just drop off the animals, and someone else cuts them. And that's been really, really helpful. Lets me just focus on one thing, do a really good job with slaughter, and then the people that are really good at cutting and have those shops can do what they're good at. But yeah, there's a definite increase in people wanting to have their animals killed, where they lived, and to be a part of it. It's just the only problem is how many animals we can do at a time, right? Because we're
Mm-hmm.
not going to do 12 beef, we'll do one or two. We're not going to do 30 sheep like we would in a day at the shop. We're going to do 4 or 5, right? So it's just a much smaller scale thing. So you get, small family farms, hobby farms, a lot of emergency calls. So a cow that broke its leg, a bull that got stuck somewhere, and something happened, and people don't want to just waste the meat, or they're not really sure what to do with it. And really, you can't take those animals to a state inspected shop. They have to be ambulatory. These animals that come into the shop
Mm-hmm.
have to be able to walk on their own. So an injured animal can't be brought there anyway. So it's just always a sad situation, but I enjoy doing that because we save a lot of meat and a lot of hard work that people put into those animals.
Yeah, for sure. And how does it work for you? You mentioned a little bit about kind of having doing game kind of pretty much throughout the year, but what's your primary times of year, primary sort of types of game that you see? I know, I guess being in Montana, it's you have a large swath of game animals up there.
Yeah, I mean, right now I've got some black bear. I'm not actually sure where that was from. May have been an Alaskan black bear, because people get stuff shipped all over now too. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we'll pick up in the next August and September a lot of pronghorn. People are doing archery, and then archery season is nothing, we don't get a ton of those, and I'm not sure why that is. I think maybe we're all, I'm kind of on a different program at that point. I'm often doing mobile slaughter, so I don't have a ton of time for archery season stuff. But by the time general rifle opens, it's a ton of elk, a ton of deer, really a lot of whitetail around where we are, and yeah, mostly deer and elk, I'd say. I've done a couple moose, but those have also been from Alaska, that have been shipped down. And that is every time I do it, I say I'm not doing it again because it's just me doing it, and I say yes every time, and then every time I say I'm not doing it again, and I inevitably do. That's a crazy amount of meat.
It's wild. But yeah, I've only ever seen pictures. I don't think I've seen. I mean, I've had moose meat and things like that, but I can't imagine. I still trying to like fathom, in comparison to like a cow or something, and it's just like, man, oh man, they just seem so massive.
Yeah, I mean the back straps alone, like it's your whole arm span basically, your wingspan.
Wow.
It's huge. They're huge, yeah, but delicious.
Yes, very very delicious. Some things I kind of want to shift over as we think about this, and let's start a little bit like in the philosophical realm because I think that's really important. And as we sort of look at offal or offal, or I guess it depends on where you're from, how you say it, the guts, the insides, the innards, I think Hank Shaw often refers to them as the wobbly bits. Like it's not always like a prized cut amongst hunters, I would say, and that's sort of something I think for a long time we've been on like a crusade to like, hey, let's push through this, let's make offal more approachable, and let's talk about it more so it's more common and get people thinking about it. And it's funny because I was doing a podcast with my tribe back home in Oklahoma, their like fish and game department equivalent, and one of the guys there was talking, and he's like, man, I really have been trying to get my kids into eating heart and liver and all these different things. And he's like, he's having really great success with it. So much so they were out on like a youth hunt, and his son's like, the first thing I want to eat, Dad, is the heart out of this deer, and all these different things that we talked about. And he was so very happy and excited that his kids were like getting into kind of the organ meats, which made me happy too. So do you see a lot of that kind of on your end when people are bringing things to you? I don't know. I'm guessing a lot of things are quartered or are field dressed or things like that. Are people asking or saving organs, either domestic or wild?
Yeah, most of the game that I get in is if they brought it out whole, it's definitely already gutted. And then a lot of it is quartered and in game bags. So I don't see a lot of those guts, but in just talking to people, it does seem, I mean, people seem to really have latched onto at least saving the heart, even if they're not, totally sure what to do with it. I think a lot of people feel like it's a thing they're supposed to do, especially a lot of first time or, new hunters that have really spent a
Mm-hmm.
lot of time thinking about it. That seems to be something that is pretty standard. Liver, I'll talk people through sometimes. I think a lot of people aren't sure which organ is the liver, right? Like, yeah, and I noticed this when we're doing hog camp, gutting pigs with people, as I'm pulling guts out and we're talking through what things are. And, I'll pick up the spleen and people ask if that's the liver, and we've got the stomach and, oh, what's that? It's unless you've done it a few times and really know what you're looking for. I mean, to me, it seems obvious, but I totally understand how your first few times if no one's told you, how would you know what's what? So the heart is obvious. Everything else, I think, gets a little more blurry. So people aren't always totally sure what to do there. Domestic, I push it on people. I'm like, I'll bring my own Ziploc bags and I'll put everything in there and I'll tell people, go stick, even if you're not going to deal with it right now, put it in your freezer. If you have questions, ask me. And I'll save everything from tongue, liver, heart. My favorite thing to get people to eat is the cheeks. So I'll always pull the cheeks out.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's my number one. I'm obsessed with cheeks. So I'll and really, I think that's a good intro, right? For people, like, if they'll actually cook it and eat it and they're kind of minds are blown, and then something that they'd never heard of. When I first heard of cheek, I think it was when I was in Australia working at that French restaurant, and beef cheek was on the menu, and I just thought it was insane. It's like, I had never heard of it, and then after eating it, I now have a beef cheek tattoo. That was the first tattoo I got because I'm so obsessed with it.
That's
I love
awesome.
I love saving stuff for people and talking them through cooking it and then hearing back that it was, fantastic, and then they want it the next time. And there are people who are just they're never going to take it, but then I get to go home with stuff too. So either way,
Yes.
I win.
I've butchered things for people and have been like, they're like, I only want this, and this. Like, you can take the rest. And I'm like, are you sure? Like, we're talking like shanks and ribs and all these other things. And I'm like, I will like, those are meals. Like, yes, I'll take those. Of course.
Yeah, it's like gold.
No, it is. And I've done the same thing of like, I remember particularly there was a guy, I don't know how I got connected with him. It was when I was in Key West. He lived in Key West, but his family had a place up near the Everglades, and they would go up and shoot pigs all the time, and they would come back and they would bring them down, and it was largely just like quarters, but it was the same thing. He'd be like, I just want like ground meat, just cut some steaks, just like. And I was like, do you want like roast or anything? And he's like, well, I guess so. Like, I'll try it. And I was like, hey, what about the shanks? And he's like, well, I don't know what that is. And I was like, hold on, man. Let's sit down and have a conversation about what shanks are. And so I did the same thing. I would like just cut the shanks and backseal them, and I'd write on there like, put in the crock pot or whatever and like let them cook. And the first time he cooked them, he messaged me. He's like, dude, these are so good. He's like, I didn't realize I was missing these the whole entire time. And I'm like, yeah, man, the shanks are just magical. And well, to my sadness, I stopped getting the shanks off his pigs, but I'm glad he was really enjoying them. I was going to say this, and you triggered a thought kind of about the use and identification of kind of organs as they come out of the animal. That's also like, that's a very peak time during the butchery and slaughter process of like, you're cutting open the animal and everything comes out and you kind of like pulling it out. And people's anxiety, I mean, in my earlier days, same, even still now, depending on like the situation of like weather and dealing with animals and where I'm at in the field of like, that's kind of like peak stress sometimes because you're trying to like move through the motions. You're trying to remember what to do in that moment. And like, you may be like, I don't really remember what this is. And depending on the number of times you've done it, your goal may be just to like get things out, pick out the liver or kidneys, and then just try to like get things in bags and get the animal quartered up. So I totally get that. I go through it, that kind of like high stress time, I guess, in that even myself, I'll admit it sometimes.
Well, yeah, and I mean, if it's weather dependent, if it's getting dark,
Yeah.
and I think another thing is if you've got shot something, that's a whole other ordeal, right?
Mm.
And in that
Mm-hmm.
case, the heart is going to be easier to save because it's sort of protected by that diaphragm, but
Mm-hmm.
everything else might be a little exploded, and I think that happens a lot. I mean, based on shot placement that I see, just when animals come in. And I'll see the remnants of something that had exploded on the inside, and at that point, I mean, fair enough if you're not saving everything that's in there.
Yeah, the ick factor kind of creeps in too. People are like, I don't want to deal with this. Like, I
Yes.
get it. But I think it's still like, we talk a lot about, the whole animal use and everything like that. And I think still as hunters, we kind of like need to mentally train ourselves to kind of like encourage each other, continue to like work through that, whatever it is, and explore, because it's a really unique place to have all those organs available.
Yeah, it is. And to know the animal that it came from and that you killed it, and I mean
Mm-hmm.
that in itself is unique. But also a lot of these organs are hard if you're trying to find liver or I was just talking to a friend about saving tripe.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you have, maybe a Mexican market or something like that near you, a lot of those organs can be impossible to find because some, like at the shop where I worked, we couldn't save stomachs. We didn't have the HACCP plan that you had to have, and all the hoops you have to jump through to save certain things. And so it's exciting if you get an animal and you've suddenly got access to all these organs that you don't get to eat or mess with usually. It can also be totally overwhelming. I get that too, because it is a lot of work, especially saving tripe is a lot of work. And if you're not, close to your truck or you don't have an easy way to save
Mm-hmm.
everything, that can be an ordeal too. But yeah, I really encourage people to, every time maybe save something new after you're comfortable with saving livers. Next time, if you want to do kidneys, if eventually you do want to do stomachs, and if you have the opportunity to have an animal, bring it out whole and process it at your house, I would say try to save as much as you can because it's, I don't know. I just have a great time, and tripe is one of my favorite things to eat. I love using intestines for sausage casings, which is a
Yep.
massive amount of work, but
Yeah.
it's really fun. I mean, people laugh, and it's just you can obviously go buy casings at the store, but I don't know. I think it's fun. It's a ton of work, but it's pretty rewarding.
How do you process those? I've seen it. I've never done it myself. I've seen videos frequently of it done. I've never. What's your process for doing that?
For saving intestines, it took a while to learn how to do it because I couldn't really find any instructional videos. A lot of videos that I would find would be
Mm.
women in maybe I'm not really sure where, Central America somewhere, and maybe in Africa you would just see these sort of grainy videos of women washing out intestines in river water. And I couldn't find any actual instructional videos. That was all I could find. So I was sussing it out from that and then trying to read everything I could. But what I do is, I'll pull them out, try to clean out, empty out anything that's in there, which is basically just poop. Clean that all out, get a hose in there, get it as clean as I can. And then what I think people don't realize you do is you turn the whole thing inside out. So an easy way to do that is if you can get your finger underneath, kind of the end of it and then get water running into there, the whole thing kind of like those, what were those toys? The water snake, the little water snake things. Did you ever have those growing up?
Oh
That
yeah,
were,
yeah, yeah. Yep. I know what you're talking
yeah.
about.
The whole thing sort of turns itself inside out with that water
Yes.
pressure. I mean, it takes a lot of practice to do that. But so get those intestines turned inside out, and then take a not a sharp knife, a slightly dull knife, and you just scrape, 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 and you're basically scraping off the membrane that's inside those intestines and anything else that's left in there. Then you use them when they're inside out. You don't need to turn them back, right right side out, whatever it would be. But you just scrape, 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 and get that membrane off, get anything gross out of there, and I mean, wash like crazy. And I'm sure people, I mean, obviously for commercial use, they're using, I don't know if it's bleach. I don't know what they're running through there to make sure it's clean, but I've never done that. And I'll put them in a saltwater solution just to keep
Mm-hmm.
them, to preserve them and get that a little cleaner. But it's a ton of work. It sounds like a ton of work, and it is. It's meticulous and takes a little while, but truly, I mean, because I make so much sausage during game season, and it's not always my favorite thing, mostly because when casings break when I'm stuffing sausage, it just makes me lose my mind. And when I've used casings from animals that I've killed, I rarely have them break, and I don't know why that is.
Huh. I wonder if it's maybe through that process where they're clearing off that membrane, if just because of the way the industrial process just like takes more away of the membrane. It definitely, that makes me think a lot.
I think freshness has something to do with it
Uh,
too, because a lot of those,
yeah.
I have casings that I have in the fridge that stay there for months, and they're packed in salt. And I wonder sort of if the salt breaks it down, and just that
Mm-hmm.
they're not from an animal that was killed yesterday or 2 days ago, whatever.
Mm-hmm. That's true, and the salt can draw the moisture out too, which can make them more fragile. It's very
Right.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to add that one to my list of doing next time I get something. Trying to clean out the intestines to do sausage from, which would be a noble cause.
Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With fishingbooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. Fishingbooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to fishingbooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today. Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With fishingbooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. Fishingbooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to fishingbooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today.
Let's talk a bit about fat. I've got a big headline in my notes. Is like fat is an organ too. I don't know if it's actually an organ, but I'll take my notes for what they are and go with that. So, couple different types of fats. So we talk a little bit about caul fat. We don't talk a lot about caul fat. We talk about kidney fat, leaf fat, suet. I don't know, depending on types of animals, different types of fat. What do you like to do with fat, or have you dove into the realm of fat usage?
I haven't done a whole lot with it just because I don't usually have time, especially during game season. And often it's, if it's like a pig or beef or anything, it's not my animal that I'm killing
Mm-hmm.
it and then I'm taking it somewhere else. But I mean, I almost always am asked to save fat if I'm butchering something, especially on pigs. And beef. Lamb fat, not so much. Lamb fat is, I think, a little more like deer or elk, where it can get a little waxy and it does hang on to flavor a little bit more. And sometimes people aren't into that flavor. I will save a lot of deer and elk fat if there is fat on there. I save it for a friend who he and his wife make lotions and candles and all that stuff. So I often have a bag of deer and elk fat. But it is kind of rare to even see that much fat on when I'm processing wild game, unless it's some cow elk that's been out in the field for a while and you'd think it was a beef based on how much fat, is on there. It's gorgeous. I mean, something that I am really interested in bear hunting and bear fat. I talked to a lot of people about rendering lard. I have a friend that just was rendering bear lard 2 days ago and sending me videos of it, and it looks gorgeous. And we were talking about he was cooking salmon in the bear fat and then I mentioned doing confit, and it like doing sort of like the
Hmm.
fancy stuff that you would use pork fat or duck fat or something with, and I think using something like bear fat, I don't know, it's kind of exciting, kind of a novelty.
I agree. I've done well, so Adam Steele and I did like flambeau oysters with bear fat. We've done like
Nice.
I get it occasionally. I haven't had my own bear, so like just getting it from friends is mainly where I've gotten it from, and it's like it's cool to see and cool to get, and it's like that little prize tub or jar of something. And you're like, oh my gosh, exactly what you said. I'm going to do all the fancy things with it. I'm going to make pastries, or I'm going to, confit, or I'm going to, I don't know, light it on fire and pour it over oysters. Like lots of different things.
Yeah, the doing, like pie crust, and you think about I just think about making like a huckleberry pie with bear fat in that crust. Like, God, does it get much better than that? I don't think so.
That's pretty local. In combination of like those things just seem to naturally really, really go well together. Do you do much with caul fat? Or do you
I
see
love
much of
caul
it?
fat. Yeah, I'm a proponent of saving caul fat. One of my favorite things to do with it is just to make I would call them crepenettes, but it's basically meatballs. And
Mm-hmm.
wrapping those with caul fat, and that was the first way I ever had eaten caul fat, and it sort of has just stuck in my brain as something that was just decadent and delicious, and so that's sort of my go-to. Yeah, to me, call fat is a pretty I don't know what the word is. It's a simple thing to be able to save and deal with. There's not a
Mm-hmm.
whole lot that you have to do to it, and I can understand how it seems intimidating, but it really is just a fairly simple ingredient to use, and it's really versatile. So I would suggest saving call fat if you can, if it's not already, dirty, and some of them, some animals are just not going to have a whole lot, and it's just going to be based
That's
on time
yeah.
of year and the animal, and yeah.
I think I've seen the least amount probably on pronghorn antelope. I've
Yeah, I could see
seen,
that.
talking about like thickness, like it's there, but it's sometimes just like paper thin, and you can't even like take it out without just tearing it with your hands because it's just so fragile. But for those who don't know, caul fat's kind of like that sheet of kind of like veiny, clear, translucent fat that wraps around the organs inside the body cavity, and
It
it's
kind of
great.
looks like lace.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. The ability for it to, when kind of used properly, and it's pretty open the way you can use it. Like I don't think even though it seems delicate, it unto itself, like through cooking, is not, because as long as you can blast it with high heat and it gets a little crispy, you can cook it a little slower and it renders out, but it like does such a great job of sealing moisture in and adding kind of like a natural basting, which is, I really like the crepenettes. I've done roast with it where I've taken like herbs and stuff and laid on top of the roast and then like wrapped it in there and then cooked the roast. And that always turns out really fun. And then burgers I've done. I don't know. The burgers I'm not as much of a fan with because I feel like the sides don't always cook all the way through. And then you like take a bite of the burger and it like kind of like is still a little stringy on the sides. And that's just, I know
Yeah.
there was a lot of like social media build up about making burgers and wrapping them, and I'm like, okay, it's good. I like the meatballs, like you said, like the meatball crepegnette style. Those are really fun and like just a really great, because I also like, I don't know that I've ever pulled off like, oh, this is a giant 4x4 sheet of caul fat. Like I think it just comes off in like pieces, and I'm like, oh, that piece is good, this piece is not good. Like
Yeah, it comes out in
it's
chunks
always been
sometimes,
interesting.
depending on how you're
Yeah.
pulling those guts out. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I think the meatball thing is great. Would you bring up an interesting point, which I don't know that everybody really kind of talks about, because we talk about cleaning animals, but we don't talk about keeping things clean while cleaning animals. How do you deal with that in sort of like the domestic slaughter side, and then what do you think are some tips we could give to folks on the hunting side, because there's like two different levels of like equipment and availability and the way in which things are done.
Yeah, I mean, as far as keeping, if you're keeping organs, keeping things clean, just thinking ahead, I always have big, gallon Ziploc bags, and things are bound to get dirty, and that's fine. I think we probably should be
Mm-hmm.
eating a little more dirt, honestly. And the stuff that's inside an animal, especially a ruminant, if there's, grass, if you nick the stomach and there's some grass that comes out, there are places in the world where people eat that, and it's actually
Mm-hmm.
like a super important part of their diet. So it's not going to hurt you. If anything, it's just there's a bunch of microbes in there. It's a little fermentation chamber. So I think we get a little we can go over the top in obsessing about keeping things clean. And I think we would, we're fine eating a little more dirt and sort of messy stuff than we think we are. But beyond that, I mean, it's like you don't want to go over the top and have things just super dirty. But yeah, thinking ahead, having a place to keep things. And then when if I'm doing domestic stuff and I have organs that I've brought back, depending on what it looks like, I'll rinse them off. I try to keep water out of most things that I'm doing, just because water is a really good vector for bacteria. And I think people
Mm-hmm.
lose sight of that too. It's like, oh, but I want it clean. Like, yes, but that water is going to foster, it's a really good environment for, if you are worried about getting sick, that's the way that it's going to happen. And what I do, I kill chickens a lot. I kill a lot of my own chickens. I kill chickens for other people. And something that I've started doing with those, which is a remnant of how I used to do things at the shop, is I have a lactic acid solution. And you can buy lactic acid on, I think I get mine from Amazon, but you put it in, like a weed sprayer with water, and you can spray off. I mean, if you want to spray the organs, if you want to spray your animal when you bring it back, right? And if you've rinsed it off, the lactic acid solution is essentially, it's what makes pickles. We have lactic acid in our bodies. It doesn't allow bad bacteria to grow. It's why we can ferment things and eat them. And that lactic acid has essentially killed off the nasty stuff. And so spraying a really diluted lactic acid solution on anything that you're going to eat, if you're worried about that it is dirty or has been contaminated with something, I think that's a great way to go. It's an extra sort of safety measure, I guess.
Huh. I mean, it makes sense in my mind. I've never heard it before, but that's a really great tip.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm doing chickens, I'll sometimes just make a little bath, use a plastic
Mm-hmm.
tote and have a little lactic acid solution in there. I try not to leave them in there too long with that, because I'm not really sure what the breakdown looks like. And you can taste it a little bit if you get too much, but it's not going to hurt you. But yeah, I mean, it's just an added measure if you're worried about that stuff. It's super easy to do, and it's food safe. It is food, and if you're doing it diluted enough, you're never going to taste it. I mean, every animal that went through that state inspected shop was sprayed with a lactic acid solution after the carcass was washed. So that's a pretty standard thing in meat production anyway. So
Oh, that's good to know. So, like, it would be if you're like, say you had like a gut shot deer or something, and you've got it hanging back at your house, and you're trying to like get it cleaned up. Instead of spraying it with a hose, you'd mix up a lactic acid solution and kind of spray the inside out to kind of deal with whatever happened in there.
yeah, I mean, if there's grass in there, if there's what we would call ingesta, basically anything that came out of a rumen or intestines or whatever, if it's in there, I would try to get it out. I'd wash it out or trim it out. Trimming, I think, is people tend to want to just wash things, which is fine to an extent, but I'm of the mindset that if there really is a lot of something that you don't want in there, trimming is the most effective way to get that out, because even if you wash it off, you might not see it on there, but that doesn't mean that it's totally
Mm-hmm.
clean. So I'm a big fan of trimming, especially if it's something like poop, and that's something that you're probably not going to want to eat. But trim that off and
Mm-mm.
then trim it off and then wash it off. I mean, this is like if it's something sort of catastrophic, right? If there really
Sure,
was a
sure,
gnarly
sure.
gut shot, wash that off. And then if you're going to use water, then apply the little, it's basically a mist. You're just misting it with this lactic solution. And yeah, not necessarily washing something out with a lactic acid. It's sort
Yep.
of a final
Just
step.
a spray. And
A
then, of
spritz.
course, normal meat, hang it, let it dry, let it get back to cool down so that you can then kind of do the cutting part of it after that.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to open it up because you open the door with cheeks. Let's start with cheeks as far as like kind of what excites you about cheeks, and let's think of it from like a texture standpoint, because I'm going to loop in some other things. And actually, the head is like a great place to start with kind of like cheeks and tongue and all those things. What excites you about that area of the animals from a culinary perspective?
The cheeks, I mean, it's you had mentioned shanks. I always say if I could only choose, one cut to eat, yeah, I would choose all the tough parts, really. I
Mm-hmm.
love steak, but I love those tough cuts that you cook low and slow. There's just something so for me, I think there's a lot of nostalgia around it. The way that I cook cheeks, the way they come out, it tastes a lot like something my grandpa used to make, and there's just a lot of nostalgia there for me. And it's just, I mean, on a cold, fall, winter day, and you've got cheeks in braising on the stove for 4 or 5 hours, and God, it really is decadent, because those cheeks are,
Mm-hmm.
especially on bigger animals. I eat a lot of beef cheeks, but I pull them off elk too. Elk have pretty decent sized cheeks. Pork cheeks are great, but they are doing so much work for that animal, for the life of that animal. And then there's a huge chunk of just a big sort of disc of connective tissue on there. And when I first started saving cheeks, I would trim it off. I thought it was, I thought I should probably trim it off. And I wasn't understanding why they weren't as good as I thought they should be when I cooked them. And then I started leaving that connective tissue on there. And that really is the thing that when it cooks down and is just, I mean, it's silky smooth and oh my God, it's just so good. So anything that has a lot of connective tissue, I'm kind of a fan of because if you cook it the right way, it's going to be, I think, one of the best things that you'll ever eat.
Yeah, that the mouthfeel as things kind of go from you get varying levels, collagen, gelatin, whatever you want to call it. We had somebody correct one of our articles in a comment saying that something we were talking about, particularly, I don't know, silver skin, it's not collagen or gelatin. I don't know. By the way, like I don't want to digress down into that rabbit hole. Like lumping all those for the layman, like lumping all those into kind of the category of like you end up with just this like Adam describes it so very, very well of like this unctuous mouthfeel of like the way it tastes, the way it feels when you eat it. It's just like it's just very pleasing and like homey and comforting. And I'm with you. Like it's nostalgic of like a really good stew or braised dish where you're just like, I picture like cutting into this beautiful cut of meat very gently and then like eating it, and it just like you're just kind of like, this is really really nice.
Yeah.
And then I'll go completely sideways and be like tacos and burritos with like barbacoa with the head or lingua with the tongue, like those braised, that meat braised and put into any form of corn or flour wrapper is just magical to me, and I can never pass up on that in a restaurant ever.
Agreed. I was just in Santa Barbara last weekend and stopped at a little taco truck and had tripe tacos, cheek tacos, and tongue tacos. And the guy came over. He was like, "You ordered the cheek. How is it? Is it good?" And I was like, "Man, this is my like I this is my favorite thing ever." He's like, the cheek is just so good." And I wonder how many people actually end up ordering that because I think you hear lengua, tongue tacos that has kind of become sort of trendy. So I imagine people are
Mm-hmm.
ordering those. I would imagine not a ton of people are ordering tripe unless they're in the know sort of. But I
Mm-hmm.
was not I wasn't, it didn't shock me to see cheek on there, but I forget that other people aren't thinking about and doing this sort of thing all the time, and that seeing cheek on there would be like, what in the hell is that?
Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With fishingbooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. Fishingbooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to fishingbooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today. Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With fishingbooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. Fishingbooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to fishingbooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today.
and we talked a little bit about it, but I think the first time I actually had tripe as early 20s, maybe, I moved out to California, and we lived in a very predominantly Asian, specifically like Vietnamese and Chinese area in San Diego. And we would go get dim sum, and they had this, like, it was tripe with like jalapenos and all these different like juices, and it came out as part of the dim sum platter, and it was just really, it's like chewy and soft and like satisfying all at like the same time, and then the spice would hit you, and there was some acidity, and it was just like, man, this is just like really, really good. And then I've had it in like pho before and all these things. It's such a great thing. I've never saved or utilized it really from game animals, but when I come across it, I usually will try it and get it. And I've also never like purposely gone out and like, I'm going to buy tripe today and cook it myself. But it's fun.
It is. I'm a huge fan. It's just, it is a project, but what you get out of it is just, I love eating tripe. The first time I had tripe, I think, was in Portland. There was a restaurant that I would go to, and one day they had a special that was, it was like deep fried tripe dipped in, there was an aioli dip, and I ordered it because I thought, why not? I should probably try this at some point. And it has been a dish that I have thought about, I mean, maybe once a week for years since I first tried it. It's just, there's something so, it's sort of like that same feeling of eating cheeks or shank or whatever, the texture of it that I think people are initially afraid of, that's actually just very comforting. And man, these tripe tacos that I had,
Mm-hmm.
it was basically, I hadn't seen it done this way. I don't think I've seen tripe tacos until then, but basically it seemed like they just cut it into tiny little pieces and deep fried that also. And obviously deep frying things is a pretty good intro for people to try something that they're nervous about. So, if you're going to
Yeah.
try eating tripe, deep fry it first. It's always going to taste good. And then once you realize that it's not scary and it's actually pretty delicious, and you can move on to other preparations. But and tripe is really interesting because there are different versions based on what stomach you decide to take, right? Because ruminants have 4 stomachs, and those first 3 stomachs are what's usually used for tripe. So you have the rumen, the reticulum, and the omasum, and those are I think the rumen is what they would call blanket tripe, and the reticulum is what you'd call honeycomb tripe, which you see a lot, and then the omasum is book tripe, which I haven't really dealt with. It's a little more, it's difficult to clean. It's a little stranger to eat, I think. But the first 2 stomachs, and if you have a deer, or if say you raise sheep or whatever, and you're going to kill your own sheep and you want to get into that, just cut into that stomach and see what the inside of it looks like. And if it looks like honeycomb, or if it's got these, sort of a blanket texture, you're in the right place.
That is good. I did want to talk a little bit about the sweetbread, which don't typically find on game animals. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think it would be pretty small.
Yeah, and that's the thymus.
Yep.
And typically calves or lamb are going to have it. It's something that decreases as the animal ages, I think. Is that, I'm trying to remember.
I'm not totally sure on all the specifics on thymus glands, and like, if they get smaller. I have heard that as especially on beef, as that animal gets older, that gland would be smaller. So you usually, if you eat thymus, if you eat sweetbreads and it's beef sweetbreads, it'll be from veal essentially, and then lamb sweetbreads. And people get confused about what lamb actually is. You're not, for the most part, unless it's spring lamb. A lamb is a full 120, 130 pound animal that's just under a year old. So yeah, the younger animals, and I don't know if it's a size thing. I don't know if it's a taste thing, if it starts to have like less of that mild taste the older the animal gets. But again, another thing that's really good, to you just poach them and batter them and fry them.
Maybe it starts doing its job more.
Yeah, and it's there is the thyroid gland is down there too, which you don't necessarily want to eat, but there are some really good diagrams online on which is which.
Yes. Follow the diagrams.
Yes. Yeah.
Any other odd spots or odd organs? I guess odd, I use that very loose term, that we should hit on.
Tail. If you kill something that has any sort of tail, I eat a ton of oxtail, which is just beef tail. Yeah.
Ooh. Oxtail is phenomenal. That's pretty commonplace in Hawaii. Oxtail. Everywhere
Is
in the
it?
store. Yeah. I'm trying to think, like, what would be a good translation over into the wild food world if we were talking about tail? I know I've heard people use like turkey tail before for different things. I
Sure.
don't know on big game.
I mean, I think if you saved enough of them, because you look at on a whitetail, they have a little bit of a tail there. Even on
Mm-hmm.
hogs, it just depends on the animal. Sometimes one will be longer, one will be shorter. I think in that case, you'd probably just have to stockpile them a little bit to actually get a meal out
Mm-hmm.
of it.
I have to carve a new section out in my freezer for tails. Maybe like a stockpile of tongues, a stockpile of testicles, a stockpile of all these different like smaller organs. Now I'm gonna have to add tails to it.
Yeah, that when you finally have enough, you can. I
Yeah.
feel like that's the same with if you're saving cheeks on deer, or even depends on the size of the elk or the size of whatever pig. It might be a couple animals before you have a full meal there.
And I think, because oxtail typically has a bit more meat on it. I don't know. I don't think we'd find that much on a whitetail or even, other big game animals.
Yeah,
Using them probably like stocks would be a good one to like add some gelatin and stuff into the stock would be really nice.
yeah.
That probably would be a great use for it. Or you could like cook it and like nibble it off, like, I don't know, thinking through like
Yeah.
chicken's feet or something like that, an equivalent size or shape.
Totally. Yeah, a little appetizer.
I guess kind of we'll put it in the offal realm. We put it in the offal section, the fifth quarter in the book, but feet like are definitely something I think is it's on every animal we shoot, we hunt. They all have feet and they're
Yeah.
phenomenal. Adam's got a great recipe in there. I think it's like the Trotter sauce where he makes like a sauce and you kind of like, or you makes a soup and you kind of like pick off the meat and add it back into it. Like that was a really beautiful dish in the book that he did. But you definitely stocks, things like that. I know I've had growing up in the South, pickled pig feet. You eat some of the meat off of that. Those are really phenomenal. Lots of stuff you can do, I think, with a trotter if you venture into it. That's definitely a lot of like Google searching, YouTube videos, rabbit holes that you could go down to see what to do with trotters and stuff like that.
Yeah, and a lot of the things that we're talking about, whether it's sweetbreads, trotters. I know before we started recording, we were talking about brains.
Mm.
A lot of stuff that you'll see on menus outside of the U.S., especially like my favorite restaurant in London is called St. John, and it's Fergus Henderson, who's sort of brought back this idea of eating offal, eating the whole animal. And he has a couple different cookbooks that have some really incredible recipes for things like trotter, sweetbreads, brain, yeah, all kinds of stuff like that. But again, you can make some very decadent stuff with those sort of off bits and trotters. I'm always we definitely don't want wild hogs up here in Montana. That's not something I'm wishing for, but I am a little bit jealous of people that get to hunt pigs a lot because the culinary options are just endless.
Yeah, it's man. I'm in the same boat with you. Like, oh no, wild pigs are everywhere, which are not great because they destroy the environment and they displace native species and things like that. But man, oh man, are they good to eat? Like,
Yeah, truly. Like,
just like,
yeah.
oh, that's another big thing here in Hawaii too is pig hunting as well. Like, pretty majority. I'm on Oahu, and that's like largely the culture is wrapped around pig hunting from a hunting standpoint. That and upland birds. So pretty cool to see both those kind of like very opposite things. So
Yeah.
let's see. So, sort of last thoughts, alibis. Anything you want to leave the listeners with? Anything you think as we kind of close out a more in-depth, advanced discussion on kind of like butchery, processing, and offal organs?
Yeah, I think if anything, just kind of putting aside your fear of eating something that might be weird, putting aside the fear of texture. I was talking to a friend about this the other day, just about, there's that the carnivore diet is really big, and a lot of people are hunting, a lot of people are eating a lot of meat, but we're not necessarily eating the whole animal. And really, when you look at cultures that eat mainly meat, people in the Arctic and whatever, there's so many essential nutrients in these pieces that we throw away, whether it's vitamin C in tendons and in liver, or, these things that we just toss out and think we're getting the full benefit of the full animal by eating just burger or roast. But yeah, I think we're missing out on a lot of things that we actually, like, our deep sort of caveman brains know are delicious and know are good for us. And I think if you try it once or twice, you kind of that fear starts to dissipate, and then you can't stop thinking about what else you can eat, right? It's a slippery slope to open that door and maybe try tripe or try doing something with the intestines or eating cheeks, and then you'll not be able to throw anything away at some point because you get a little bit obsessed.
Agreed. I think for me, it's one of those things like it's always kind of like a new exploratory area, and then you get this very special thing and you're like, man, what am I going to do with this? And then kind of like the excitement of like researching, learning, figuring out what to do, and then in the end it being like really phenomenal, kind of like peaking over, getting a bit nervous about trying something new or different, especially like having a domestic version and then sort of trying to DIY it yourself on a wild animal, just kind of like learning through the process. And I get really excited about letting my kids try the different organ meats. Just like I mentioned earlier, kind of to bring it full circle of other people being excited about getting their kids to try it. Me the same. Like I was wrapping up stuff for the Cooking by Cuts, and the testicle dish was a last add in. And so I made it just here a couple months ago and was getting my daughter to try it, who's 14, and a 14-year-old girl. It was just like, it was the funniest, wildest thing. And like, she told her friends about it, and I checked something on her text messages, and she was telling her friend about trying it, and they were making jokes and just having fun. But it was like, it's an exciting, interesting thing to be able to share. And like, now too, I've also normalized it for her to be like, it's not that big a deal. Like, it's just another food we can eat. And I think it is really exciting to see that process happen. And even mentally for me, that ick factor can sometimes sneak up and you're like, actually, I'm not going to do that. So getting past that to know, like, actually, whatever, I want to get through this, and I want to try it, and I want to enjoy this particular cut off the animal. And I think Adam also says it very best. It's like it adds one more meal to your freezer. And like if you're looking to, make the movement of kind of like living more off wild animals, or, stuff you're butchering yourself, growing or butchering, raising, then that's a very crucial step to be like, hey, there's one more thing in the fridge that we can eat, or one more thing in the freezer, that we can eat that will help kind of like get us through the year till next season or next animal or whatever. So yeah, totally.
Yeah. And yeah, I think your point about introducing kids to that stuff is huge, because once it's normalized at a young age, I mean, it's just endless, right? Like they'll start to eat pretty much anything, which is awesome. And then it sort of shifts the culture of what's okay and what's normal and all that. I love that. And, I think every different new piece that you decide to eat really opens up your world a little bit, right? And you might start to see how other people eat differently and want to travel, because you're now a little less worried about eating something strange because you don't care anymore, right? And you've tried all the crazy stuff. And so, yeah, I think every little piece just expands your world and your capacity for trying new things, whether it's food or anything else, traveling, whatever.
Absolutely. Well, Anna, thanks so much for coming on. This was a great conversation. I look forward to many more. And then I will see you in January up at camp.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Me too.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming on. Thanks everybody for listening. Whatever podcast platform you're listening to, please punch that 5-star button. Leave us a review. Tell us what we're doing right, or tell us we're doing wrong. Thanks everybody. Have a good day.
Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With FishingBooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. FishingBooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to FishingBooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today. Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With FishingBooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. FishingBooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to FishingBooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today.